Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are joining us, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Sess from Business Review, and I will be your host. It is our pleasure to have INNIO Jenbacher with us today, who will be presenting this webinar entitled Hydrogen Engines as a Net Zero Technology for Europe. Today's guest speakers are Dr. Klaus Huber, Strategic Product Development Manager, Matthias Feldman, Engineering Platform Leader H2 and eFuels, and Wolfgang Becher, General Manager for Europe Indirect and LATAM. Before we begin, I'd like to welcome you to our webinar platform. You'll notice that this webinar is browser-based, so if you disconnect for any reason, please just click on the link that you received via email to rejoin the session. This webinar will also be recorded and available on demand. If you have any questions, you can send them in via the questions widget. Just type them into the box at the top right-hand corner of your screen and click submit. We will allocate some time at the end of the session to address any questions or thoughts that you may have. Please use the yellow help widget if you require any assistance, and you can move, resize, and maximize any of the windows in front of you to get a better view of the slides. But now, please allow me to welcome Wolfgang.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the webinar, Hydrogen Engines as a Net Zero Technology for Europe. Thank you very much for your participation. I have the pleasure to kick off this webinar today with quickly introducing the speakers, very shortly introducing the company that the three of us are working for, and also sharing with you some key current dynamics which the players in the European energy segment need to deal with. My name is Wolfgang Berger. I'm the General Manager for INNIO Jenbacher for the region Latin America and what we call Europe Indirect, which are the countries in Europe which we serve through distributors mainly. The second speaker today will be Klaus Huber, as said before already. Right? He's our Strategic Product Development Manager, and he's going to talk about hydrogen applications and references. And last but not least, Matthias Feldman, who is our engineering platform leader for eFuels. He will be talking about hydrogen engine development and testing. Now, who are we? Who is Jenbacher? Who is INNIO? INNIO is a leading provider of energy solutions and services with a massive focus on sustainable energy solutions via green fuels and also traditional energy sources. Within INNIO, we do have two product brands, Jenbacher and Waukesha, and a digital platform, which we call myPlant. We offer innovative solutions for the power generation segment in the range of around about 250 kilowatt up to 2.6 megawatt, and also for the compression segment, mainly via the brand Waukesha. INNIO is headquartered in Jenbach in Austria. We do have other primary operations in Waukesha, Wisconsin, US, and in Ontario, in Welland, Ontario, in Canada. Our Jenbacher solutions provide power, heat, and cold for multiple applications worldwide, from commercial customers to utilities, municipalities, IPPs, to greenhouses, to data centers. The worldwide installed base of Jenbacher is 25,000 engines, which produce approximately 37 gigawatts of power. 55% of these engines are installed in Europe, and 55% of these are already today running on renewable gas, including biogas, biomethane, landfill gas, sewage gas, etc., etc. What this page also shows, right, respectively, the map on this page also shows are the current commercial hydrogen installations, which are either already running or which are going to commercially run on hydrogen soon. As you can see on the page, the most of them are located in Europe, but we also do have installations already in the Americas and in Asia. Klaus Huber, my colleague, is going to talk more in depth about many of those installations a bit later today. Now, about the very dynamic development in the energy, linked with the energy transformation in Europe. It is really not easy at the moment for investors in the European energy segment to keep pace with the ongoing fast changes, given all the dynamics around fuel availability, about fuel costs, electricity costs, incentives, feed-in tariffs, etc., you name it. Probably the most of you know the main European frameworks which drive the overall direction. These are the European Green Deal, right, associated with the European taxonomy scheme, and the so-called Repower EU initiative, with its main focus to reduce Europe's dependency on Russian fossil fuels and also to fast forward the green transition. But there are many other overlapping dynamics and challenges which we face in the energy segment in Europe at the moment. You see those on the right side of the page. I tried to put them down. For sure, it's not a complete list, but I'll just walk you quickly through those. These main dynamics and challenges are, of course, the energy supply security in Europe and the energy cost and price rally, which both are major topics since Russia attacked Ukraine in the last year. Then we have the capacity market needs, meaning the need for fast dispatchable power generation in order to balance the intermittent renewable power coming from PV and wind, photovoltaic and wind. Further key challenges which we observe in the European market at the moment are the lack and the missing speed of national governments on taking decisions on energy frameworks and policies. Also the lack of capacity of the transmission and distribution networks across Europe, influencing also the permitting processes for power stations, and the decarbonization of the backup power, which is a booming segment, for example, in the data center industry at the moment. And last but not least, I would like to point out the need for energy storage systems, linked again with the massive ramp up of photovoltaic and wind in Europe, which energy storage systems can be either batteries or hydrogen. In the case of hydrogen, of course, ideally being green hydrogen. And this now is actually the segue to the presentation of my colleague Klaus Bayerhuber, who is going to kick off his presentation with his thoughts about energy storage. Klaus, can you please take over? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wolfgang, and welcome from my side. Yeah, I would like to get started with explaining why we need hydrogen for electricity storage. There are a lot of technologies around for storing electricity. The most known is batteries. They are widely used today. But when it comes to larger storages, larger amount of storage for a longer time, there are other technologies like a pumped hydro storage or compressed air storage. And when we go even bigger to terawatt-hour storage and storage of electricity over months and over seasonal storage, then we end up with hydrogen. Just one example, if someone is looking for 20 gigawatts of electricity storage over just 2 days, then this is 1 terawatt hour. Yeah, and this would be a dark doldrum over 2 days only, but this can last 2 weeks, as we know. So on this chart, you see an example from Germany in 2017, over 3 days, where there was a lot of wind and solar on the grid, but then suddenly this changed and the fossil power plants need to take over about 20 gigawatts. And we did a comparison. If one needs to provide 1 terawatt hour for electricity with batteries, that would be a lot of batteries. And just the capex of these batteries would end up with 480,000 million euros. Compared to a hydrogen plant covering this 2 days, that hydrogen power plants would cost about 16,000 million euros, so 16 billion. That is a ratio of 1 to 30. Batteries would be 30 times more expensive. That's why hydrogen is needed and hydrogen is the better solution for longer time and large energy storage. So when we look to hydrogen, we hear a lot about green hydrogen, blue hydrogen. Blue hydrogen can be produced out of natural gas. Natural gas, we know, is typically directly used to produce electricity, and then electricity is converted to end energy, whatever it is. Blue hydrogen would be produced out of natural gas, adding a steam methane reforming plant, upgrading the natural gas to hydrogen, and sustainably storage of the CO2. That ends up with additional power and losses, and as a result, we need more natural gas to produce the same amount of electricity. More in the focus, we have renewable hydrogen. Renewable power will grow significantly with wind and solar, and it is, of course, the best way to use this renewable power directly for whatever we need, the electricity. But for some time, especially for winter times, we need to store some renewable power, and this, as explained before, can be done in large quantities via hydrogen. Of course, this needs a conversion from electricity to hydrogen. Then you need to compress hydrogen, store hydrogen, distribute hydrogen later on in wintertime to distributed power plants, and then convert it back to electricity. This has a lot of losses with it and ends up with the need of much more renewable power for the same amount of electricity we use at the end. But this is the only way at the moment to do large energy storage, electricity storage over longer time. Now this hydrogen need to be stored. There is local storage in tanks, but longer term, which is much more feasible then, is then a hydrogen network. That hydrogen network is already under development. Hydrogen hubs, hydrogen clusters will emerge first before these smaller networks will connect to a big network across Europe, and we will have a similar hydrogen network than we have on natural gas today. So we talked about blue hydrogen, green hydrogen. Today we typically use fossil hydrogen. Globally, it's just almost fossil hydrogen. Blue hydrogen could be a bridge before larger amounts of green hydrogens are available and green hydrogen becomes more cost competitive. On the right-hand side, you see some numbers all the way from diesel to green hydrogen. Green hydrogen today is pretty expensive, typically costs more than 10 euros per kilogram. In the future, what bigger international studies show us, hydrogen from green sources could be much more competitive and comparable to natural gas today. So where do we see the most attractive applications for gas engine distributed power at the beginning? At the beginning, we see data center as an example where hydrogen could be stored locally and used as a backup solution. But also hydrogen hubs, microgrids could be a solution that emerge first. And then there are industrial applications where hydrogen is available from an industrial process. Islands could be also a solution where hydrogen fits in the early stage. Later on, when there is a hydrogen pipeline system available and large amount of hydrogen is available, bigger balancing plants and CHP plants are then feasible to run on hydrogen. So let me show you some project examples, what we do already today. One step back, the last 25 years, we did a lot of projects with process gases containing a high hydrogen amount. We did 90 projects in 28 countries, totaling with 250 megawatt installed capacity. And I show you 3 examples here from the left. Those are 4 engines that run on a very high hydrogen fuel, because when we look to this hydrogen nitrogen fuel constitution, then about 95% of the fuel that is burning is hydrogen. So this is more or less a pure hydrogen engine, and those 4 engines run over 25 years, and all of those engines have achieved 200,000 operating hours. In the middle, you see a typical syngas project where biomass or waste is gasified, and this gas has a typical hydrogen content of 30 to 40 volume%. This is an example from Japan, but we have examples installations around the globe. And the third one is a project where hydrogen is admixed to natural gas up to 42 volume%. Going forward, we're looking more to 100% hydrogen applications. This example with mixing hydrogen to natural gas is located in Argentina. The project is called Chico. It is a region where there's a lot of oil and gas activities at the moment, but this region has also extremely good wind conditions. So about 15 years ago, there was a small wind plant with about 6 megawatt installed. This wind plant has a very, very high capacity factor of over 50%. And they installed also 2 electrolyzer units with 0.8 megawatt producing hydrogen that is stored underground in an empty gas field. And when there is not enough wind available, this hydrogen is used to blend to the natural gas in the local gas engine. It's a 420 gas engine. And this engine runs with up to 42 volume% of hydrogen. Up to 27 volume% of hydrogen, there is no power derating. Between 28 and 42, there is some power derating of the engine. This engine runs, as I said, about 15 years now and has achieved more than 100,000 operating hours. This is a picture from the site in Argentina. You see here on the very left side the 420 containerized solution. In the middle, you see these electrolyzers. Then there's an oxygen plant as a byproduct from the electrolyzer. And on the right-hand side, you see some pictures. The first engine that we converted to 100% hydrogen operation at the customer site is this project in Hamburg. For the customer Hansewerk Natur and at their project Ottmarschen, we converted a natural gas engine with 1 megawatt output that was designed and optimized for high total efficiency because it's a CHP plant, typically runs in the winter time. We converted this engine to be able to run on 100% natural gas, on 100% hydrogen, and any mixtures in between. And you can see here 2 examples with 20% hydrogen and 100% hydrogen. At 100% hydrogen, there is some derating of this engine to about 600 kilowatt. Yeah, but the total efficiency is about the same. And what is very interesting on this engine is the NOx emissions did go down. On natural gas, this engine runs on 250 milligram, on hydrogen below 100 milligram per NERM cubic meters. Matthias will talk a little bit more what technology is needed to run this engine on 100% hydrogen. Another engine, this is a 420 engine, is already delivered to South Korea. This engine can run on both fuels, pipeline gas, as well as 100% hydrogen. It shows the same output because it's optimized for the same output on pipeline gas as well as on hydrogen. It has a little bit lower electrical efficiency because it is a 60 Hertz application and it is a customer dedicated genset solution. This engine uses hydrogen from a byproduct of a polypropylene production and is installed in Ulsan in South Korea. The engine is already delivered and will go in commercial operation in summertime. A very exciting project is this with a data center, North Sea data centers in the Netherlands. As I explained before, data centers are a focal application for us because this could be a very emerging solution for hydrogen engines. This customer is running about 15 local data centers, smaller data centers, not big, large data centers in the Netherlands, in Germany, and in Switzerland. And they want to be carbon neutral, completely carbon neutral until 2030. So at the data center Groningen, they installed some fuel cells, but at the new data center in Eindhoven, they selected 6 Jenbacher hydrogen engines. And these 6 hydrogen engines producing each 1 megawatt. And as you can see on the right-hand side here, there's a hydrogen supply, typically by trucks today, because there is not a hydrogen pipeline available. There's a local storage of hydrogen. And out of this local storage, the 6 engine can run about 1 hour. And typically, electricity failure takes less than 1 hour. So we estimate about 80% of electricity failures where a backup solution is required can be covered with hydrogen. But in case this electricity failure is taking longer and the engines run out of hydrogen, the engines can smoothly switch over to natural gas operation and continue to provide backup power. Another very exciting project is this project in Serbia called Panlady. Panlady is an operator of fuel stations in Serbia. They concentrated a lot on CNG and LNG, and in the future they will do more on electric vehicle charging stations and also hydrogen charging stations. They installed in Kupria in the south a 12 megawatt PV plant. They produce hydrogen, have a local storage of hydrogen there, and then they're bringing this hydrogen by trucks, by trailers. We call it the virtual hydrogen pipeline to north of Belgrade, where they run a CHP unit with 1.3 megawatt output. And this engine can run on hydrogen as long as hydrogen is available, but can also run on natural gas to provide sustainable power. Heat will be used by a nearby commercial off-taker. So the customer had really a focus to run this engine as efficient as possible. That's why he is looking very much to run this always on in CHP application. And one other project in California where Raven developed a steam CO2 reforming process to produce a syngas out of organic waste. This project is located in Richmond, California, and the syngas produced there has about 55 to 65 volume% of hydrogen. This hydrogen or this syngas is then cleaned up, and there is a high purity of hydrogen produced with about 99.99% purity. That is then suitable for transportation purposes. But there is some tail gas left, and this tail gas, together with landfill gas, is used in 3,420 gas engines. And this hydrogen content is then about 10% in total when using this mixture. And the electricity produced with this 3,420 engine is then used to run the electricity supply of the whole gasification plant. Under the California's low carbon fuel standard, the hydrogen will achieve a negative carbon intensity credit. And just looking a little bit to the future, what could be the future application for hydrogen? We just announced that together with Stadtwerke Kiel, we announced that the Stadtwerke Kiel is planning to convert this large CHP plant from natural gas to hydrogen operation until 2035. Just in 2019, this plant replaced an old coal plant, and currently this CHP plant is running on 20 Yacht 920 gas engines, producing 190 megawatt electric power and 192 megawatt of thermal power at very high total efficiency of 91%. This gas engine power plant is also very flexible. It can ramp up and down in less than 5 minutes. And the customer wants to be carbon neutral, carbon free, even before the German deadline of 2040. So 2035, it's the customers plan to convert this pipeline gas CHP plant to a hydrogen plant. Of course, hydrogen need to be available at that time. So a lot of people talk about ready for hydrogen, readiness for hydrogen. And we did our own definition to explain to our customer what we mean when we say our engines are ready for hydrogen. In general, ready for hydrogen means for Jenbacher engines that all of our engines can be converted from pipeline gas to 100% hydrogen operation in the future. Of course, every project is a little bit different. It needs to be clarified what is the best solution and option to convert the individual engines from pipeline gas to hydrogen operation. A lot of people talk about mixing or blending hydrogen to pipeline gas, and that's why we prepared a solution so that our engines can cope with up to 25 volume% of hydrogen in pipeline gas. And as you saw on the examples before, we have already a Type 4 engine that can run on 100% hydrogen. From 2025 onwards, we will launch more engine types to be able to run on 100% hydrogen. Just a few words about blending hydrogen to pipeline gas. This can be done on the transmission level, but we think it will be more seen on the distribution level of a natural gas pipeline systems. Before a bigger dedicated hydrogen network be developed and in operation. So short term, we could see some hydrogen blended to natural gas. That's why we are preparing for this hydrogen blends in natural gas, but longer term, we will see more dedicated hydrogen applications. It is important to understand what it means blending hydrogen to pipeline gas. And here's an example blending up to 20 volume% of hydrogen to pipeline gas. It changes the WOBE index, it changes the methane number, more important for gas engine operations. And for example, 20% hydrogen changes the methane number by about 10 to 15. But also very important is the change on the low heating value. 20% hydrogen changes or reduces the low heating value by about 15%. And this can have a huge impact on the billing of the gas. And just to make sure that everyone understands, 20% hydrogen blending to natural gas means just 7% decarbonization. And that's because we talk about volume% of hydrogen and not energy. And by volume, the low heating value of hydrogen is less than a third compared to natural gas. So with that, I would like to hand over to Matthias to explain a little bit more about the technology.
Yeah,
Matthias?
Thank you, Klaus. Thank you, Klaus, very much for the introduction here and kicking us off on this topic, very interesting topic of hydrogen. Before I take you here into the details of the slide and actually in details of product development and the products that we have in a very tangible format in the context of hydrogen, I want to just quickly remind the audience that you can ask questions at any time in the appropriate Q&A tab of your screen. We have a team that is taking a look at them, and you don't have to wait all the way to the end for the Q&A session. You can make use of that at any time, and then we will get to those questions in the Q&A session. So now let's take a look at ready for H2 in our Jenbacher categories here. Basically, when we talk about hydrogen and the transition from natural gas to hydrogen, we like to think of three big categories, which Klaus already touched a little bit on. Category A, we deal with hydrogen being admixed into the natural gas network. And basically, you have a CHP operation that is running on natural gas today. And in the future, you might receive a mixture of natural gas and H2 through that very same pipeline network. How are we set up for that? How are our products dealing with that? Category B, now we're looking at higher percentages of hydrogen being admixed to natural gas, which we typically anticipate being a local admixing. So this is going to be something happening at the customer site, customer individual. We already see some of these projects coming in, and we are already also serving some of these projects with local admixing up to very high H2 percentages by volume. And then category C, now we're getting really into a 100% pure hydrogen operation, which we also, as Klaus already said, have in our product portfolio with our Type 4 engine, which can run on 100% hydrogen and is commercially available. If we take a look below the hood here in more details in these categories, then we can make a further distinction based on the volume concentration. In category A, we can think of anything less than 5%, and then A2 would be a category 5 to 25% hydrogen. As we move on to B, we can think of up to 60% hydrogen, and then also blending applications with up to 100% hydrogen. And then obviously for category C, pure H2 engines run on 100% hydrogen. For these categories, all of these categories, INNIO can offer solutions and products to support our customers. Any of our assets that we have today can run with an H2 concentration of less than 5% without any further modifications that are required. If we take a look at the range of 5 to 25%, now the hydrogen content in the natural gas and the different characteristics that Klaus just mentioned for the fuel properties become important, and we need to take some action in order to manage that in our engines. When we talk for B1 up to 60%, then we are talking about a special gas engine that is specifically designed for this range. And many of you might be familiar with syngas operations, where we typically see these type of H2 concentrations. So also here we have existing versions available. And then for the blending and pure engine operation on hydrogen, we have special released engines. And the big difference that you see here is a difference in the fuel injection system, where we transition from a pre-mixed combustion or pre-mixed fuel system to a port fuel injection system, which we will talk a little bit more about in the future slides here. So as we move on and take a look at how does this categories really translate into the product portfolio that we have, you can see here our engines type 2 to type 9 spanning our entire product portfolio, and you can see for category A, less than 5% and up to 25% of hydrogen by volume. There's a green check mark. So really for any of these applications with up to 25% hydrogen, we have a commercially available product off the shelf that can be used by our customers to support their operations. Going into category B, now we're talking about 0 to 100% in a mixing application, variable mixing application. You can see that the picture changes a little bit. Obviously, our Type 4 engine that we have also for 100% can deal in this range with up to 100% hydrogen. But also for our Type 6 and Type 3 and Type 2 engines, we have products available that can deal up with hydrogen concentrations up to 60%. For our Type 9 engine, we're at 25%. Looking at the last category, which is, I think, the most exciting one, and everybody is really interested in, is the 100% engine operation on pure hydrogen. Here, as I said, type 4 is commercially available, and you can see from a timeline indication here for the future rollouts, the work that we're currently doing in R&D in order to strengthen our product portfolio for pure H2 engine operation for the respective platforms. Type 6 starting in 2025, and then type 3, 2, and 9 following in the subsequent years. If we take a look for our type 4, 6, and 9, so the upper end of our product portfolio in terms of power output, then what can you anticipate here in terms of performance for these engine types operating on hydrogen? For type 4, we're looking at a maximum power output of about 1 megawatt for our 420 engine, which is suitable for 1 to 20 megawatt H2 power plants. Electrical efficiency is typically for these applications above 40%, and total efficiency virtually unchanged to what we have for natural gas applications today. These engines are also available with a fast start application where we can reach full load in less than 5 minutes, and these are available today. So if you want one, don't hesitate, contact our sales team. We're sure we can help you out in this area. For type 6 and type 9, you just saw on the previous slide that this is currently in R&D, and we're looking at the 2025 plus product introduction here. But we already want to give you a little bit of a teaser and a look out into the future of what's in the pipeline. For type 6, we're anticipating a power output of up to 3.5 megawatt, which is then suitable for power plant applications with up to 60 megawatt. We're above 42% electrical efficiency in this range, and for total efficiency and startup time, the same value applies for type 4. Looking at our largest product, the type 9 engine, here we're looking at 9 megawatt output on hydrogen operation. Now we're talking really big power plants, for instance, like the one that Klaus mentioned in Kiel, with a capacity of 50 to 200 megawatt power output in H2 operation. The electrical efficiency in this range will be above 44%. And again, for total efficiency and startup time, we have the same range as for the type 4 and type 6, which is also very comparable to our current natural gas offerings. Now, let's take a closer look at the subcategories in terms of some details here. One certainly very interesting area is our 5 to 25% hydrogen admixing category, which is category A2. Klaus already showed you the impact of hydrogen on the fuel properties. What he didn't mention in detail is that obviously hydrogen also has a much higher laminar flame speed compared to methane or natural gas, and its ignition window, so the ignitable range for concentrations of hydrogen with air is much wider compared to that of natural gas, and same is also true for the ignition energy that is required. Hydrogen is a much more reactive fuel compared to natural gas. And therefore, if we don't take any measures with our engines and we were just to admix 25% hydrogen to natural gas, you can see that it has a significant impact on the heat release rate, which is a measure for really how fast the combustion is happening inside the cylinder. So you can see the blue curve is significantly advanced for the 25% admixing case of hydrogen over baseline natural gas, and also the peak is significantly higher. Now that results in higher peak pressures and therefore higher stress on the engine components, and also higher NOx emissions if we don't take any action to compensate for this effect driven by the different fuel properties. The good news is that INNIO Jenbacher and the engineering team at INNIO and Jenbacher has not only recognized this topic of the different fuel properties, but we have developed a compensation tool or compensation software that we can apply to our products. And therefore we can, based on the H2 content up to 25%, take measures to compensate for the different fuel properties, and therefore keep the NOx emissions flat at the baseline case for 0% admixing. And also for the peak firing, we maintain the same peak firing pressure for natural gas operation. The way we do that is really that we need information on the H2 content in the fuel gas, and we can either do that by our own sensor that we can supply with the genset, or by an external information from a local mixing system, for instance. And then it really doesn't matter if we're running at 5, 15, or 20% hydrogen. The compensation software that we have developed and the tools that we have in place will automatically adjust the engine operating point so that the emissions and the peak firing pressure are constant compared to the natural gas case. And therefore, user and customer don't have to worry about switching software or switching parameters on your genset as hydrogen is being introduced to the fuel stream. Now, before we go into the other categories, let me quickly take you to a site visit to our Jenbacher facility, because the key question might be, how did you do that? Because clearly there is no hydrogen in the natural gas network yet. In order to validate the technologies and develop the technologies I just showed to you, we have invested in a first step in a mobile H2 supply, which is depicted here on the right page. It's basically a semi-truck tube trailer that we use to receive hydrogen, and that is parked on our company grounds. And we have a pipeline network installed to our facility that provides hydrogen to all of our relevant R&D test cells. Picture on the bottom left, you can see the hydrogen coming in and how it's being admixed to the natural gas and then fed to the various engines that are subject of testing in that test cell. So this investment that we have taken in a first step was taken wisely and enabled us to do the 25% or up to 25% case, and also testing up to 100% on smaller engines. But clearly this tube trailer cannot hold the hydrogen that is required in order to run larger engines like I showed you before for our Type 6 and Type 9 engines. Therefore, we have set up our infrastructure that we can first serve it with the trailer, but then in the second step, and this is something you can see here in this aerial image of our INNIO factory, we will use the very same infrastructure to provide hydrogen via an external pipeline from a close by hydropower station, where we have teamed up with the TVAC and TNext, the local municipal companies, basically to have a power to hydrogen facility where we will generate our own green hydrogen. And then there's a pipeline that runs across the railway, which is close to our factory, into the factory, and connects there to the existing pipeline network that we used with the trailer previously to provide hydrogen to our facility. This will become active in mid of next year. We have chosen PEM electrolyzers to serve this task. And we are looking at an installation of 2 stacks with 1 megawatt capacity, which will give us about 35 kilogram of H2 production per hour. Now, clearly, that is not sufficient to directly feed an engine from that. So we also have a 1,000 kilogram storage tank that we basically run the electrolyzers 24/7 to buffer the H2 in a tank. And then we can consume it at significantly higher discharge rates with our engines for the matter of several hours or a complete shift, depending on what engine type we're looking at. And then we stop our operations and recharge the tank. And the entire setup is made such that we can easily expand to that in the future. Biggest advantage here, we're also moving next to capacity. We're also moving away from gray hydrogen at a higher price tag to truly green hydrogen from hydropower at a much lower price tag, which enable us to do more efficient, more cost-efficient product development in the hydrogen space. Now, let's take a look at local admixing with up to 60% hydrogen. As I pointed out earlier, for these up to 60% hydrogen in the fuel system, we're looking at applications in the syngas space, for instance, or wood gasification plants. And here we have a long history and many sites that we use to run with different H2 concentrations. And we have dedicated gensets and combustion systems that have been developed in the past by our special gas team on the topic of hydrogen combustion up to 60%. I don't want to go through all of the various installations that are listed here. Klaus already pointed the Hanseberg out with up to 100% hydrogen, also the site in Korea. But there has been many more sites that we have a vast experience with high hydrogen concentration in the fuel. And we're now really making the transition then to the 100% H2 operation, which I think is the most interesting case. And here we're talking about special released engines, and we're also talking about a switch in the fuel system. As I pointed out earlier, we're going from a conventional pre-mixed combustion or pre-mixed fuel system to a port fuel injection system. The top of the line here from our product portfolio is our Type 4 engines that can run on up to 100% hydrogen. Really, you can also have this as a dual fuel product where you can run virtually anything from 100% natural gas to 100% H2 at any blend ratio that you desire. The technical data depicted here is really for our 100% H2 product. You can see we're going from 620 to about 1 megawatt in electrical power output with efficiencies above 40%. And the total efficiency at a comparable level to our natural gas products. But let's take a little bit of a look at the details of the fuel injection system. And as we roll the video here, you will see on the left-hand side the conventional system that is used in terms of pre-mixed combustion. So here we use a gas mixer that we mix air and gas prior to the turbo or prior to compressing it in the turbo, and we feed the mixture through the aftercooler and the intake manifold to the engine where the mixture is combusted. Now for hydrogen, we have chosen port fuel injection for a couple of reasons that I'll talk about in a second. But the big difference here is really that we use a electronically controlled valve that is mounted very close to the intake port, and we introduce the hydrogen just before it is about to hit the combustion chamber. And it's mixed with air just before the combustion chamber. The big advantage with that system is that we have a much better control over the fuel amount that's being introduced on a cylinder individual basis. And also we minimize the volume that is present within the engine system where we have an H2 and air mixture present, which is really important if we think about product safety, given the high flammability of the hydrogen and the low energy that is required. So on the left-hand side, you can see the standard product. On the right-hand side, you can see depicted in the circles the H2 fuel rail with the feed lines to the port injection valves, and also the cylinder pressure-based controls and controls system to control these port fuel injection systems, giving us a superior dosing accuracy, much more control over cylinder individual combustion, and most important, a superior transient performance. Now, as we get to the end of my slides here, there is one important thing that I really want to leave you with as we come to the end of our webinar today. In many cases, when I talk to customers, when I listen to the people in industry, there is always the fear of being left with a stranded asset, meaning you buy a pipeline gas engine, natural gas engine today, and as hydrogen is being introduced to the network, or you want to switch to the hydrogen in the future, you might have to go and purchase an entire new system because the asset is not future-proof, cannot be upgraded. And I want to point out that this is not the case for our products. Here we really have the opportunity to go and use our assets that we sell today with up to 5% of hydrogen, no modifications required. You can go up to 25% with minor modifications as I stated, using a H2 signal and the appropriate compensation software, and you can convert your asset to that as well at a relatively low cost. Moving on to the 100% case, even there it's possible to retrofit existing Type 4 engines for 100% H2 operation. Now the conversion package is getting a bit bigger because obviously we need a different fuel system, but even here you're not left with a stranded asset, but you can really utilize the system and convert it over to operate on 100% hydrogen in the future. With that, I will take it back or give it back to Klaus for the concluding slides, and then I'm sure I will hear you again in the Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthias. Yeah, I will just finalize with 2 more slides, talking a little bit about the outlook and development roadmap of engines, explaining it, how we develop a hydrogen engine, explaining it on the history of what we did on the Type 6 engine. Here you see on the left-hand side how the Type 6 engine developed over the last 30 years. We increased output by about factor 2.5. So that means we are getting 2.5 more output from the same cylinder over 30 years. And efficiency increased from about 33% to about 47%. And a similar roadmap we're planning for hydrogen engines. Today we offer gas engines that can also run on hydrogen, or hydrogen engines that can also run on, going back to this one more time. Also run on natural gas. Over the next years, we are focusing more on dedicated hydrogen engine and will have similar performance on hydrogen engines that what we have today with natural gas engines. In a summary, what we explained, we can offer natural gas engines today that are ready for hydrogen, can be converted to hydrogen later on. That engines can run with a high percentage of hydrogen already today. 20% hydrogen in pipeline gas, we say we have validated it for 25%. In the future, that might be 30% of hydrogen in pipeline gas. We have dedicated solutions for up to 60% of hydrogen blending to natural gas. And we have already an engine that can run on natural gas and optionally on hydrogen. That would be option number 4. The same engine can be optimized for hydrogen operation and use natural gas as backup solution. Important is that all of these engines are running in CHP as much as possible, because that allows to run the engine on high total efficiency, get out the most of hydrogen, and do fuel saving in the range of about 33%. This is the case for natural gas operation as well as for hydrogen operation. And finally, when there is enough hydrogen available, we can provide then dedicated pure hydrogen engines, but that will take still a few years. So with that, we are at the end of our presentation and are happy to take some of your questions.
Thank you very much, Klaus. Just a reminder for the audience, in order to ask questions, you can send them in via the questions widget. Just type them into the box at the top right-hand corner of your screen and click submit. Now we'll start our Q&A session. Let's start with this question. What are the additional costs for a ready for H2 package that allows 25% volume of H2 in pipeline gas?
Yeah, as Matthias showed on this slide, this is a rather small package that needs a few elements and a different software or a dedicated software, and that costs about a couple €1,000. It's really a small package.
Okay, great. And what are the conversion costs from natural gas to H2 engine?
Yeah, as Matthias explained, this obviously requires a bigger package because a different fuel system is required. And today we can say all these engines that are converted in the future from natural gas to hydrogen or to a dual gas engine that can run on natural gas as well as on hydrogen can be converted to less than 25% of the total plant cost. 25% means a reasonable investment that allows to convert or upgrade an existing plant and does not need to replace the plant by a new plant. So no stranded investment upgrade can be done for an existing gas plant.
Okay, great. And another question that we got from the audience is, will ammonia be a better and as energy efficient way to store H2 instead of pure H2?
Maybe I can take this one as well. Ammonia is in the talks a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of considering using ammonia for hydrogen transportation. And then obviously your ammonia, green ammonia is then replacing gray ammonia of applications, but ammonia could also be used for power generation. And we actually work on an R&D project to run a gas engine on ammonia.
Great, thank you. Another one that we got is, with the 6 North Sea states planning new wind 168 GW, will the hydrogen market be ready?
I'm not sure if I understand this question.
Klaus, I think it's a question about infrastructure ramping up in perspective of the hydrogen generation capacities that are currently being announced. So, and I think it's an interesting question. I don't know if we have a perfect answer to that. What's in terms of distribution? I can see many exciting projects taking place right now to generate and distribute hydrogen. What I can say for sure, though, is if you have hydrogen, we're ready to help with a asset that can turn it back into electrical power and heat. And so as soon as the infrastructure is ramping up, we're ready to go and deliver products to support the hydrogen economy here.
Thank you, Matthias, for answering that. And are you positive that 1 megawatt engine is consuming 83 kg of H2 per hour?
I think yes, that's we're very confident about it. We measured it in our test cell. It's part of our efficiency calculations and performance measurements. So yes, and it's one might think it's a small number at first, but it's significant. And as we get to larger engines, obviously then consumption is even higher. Therefore, infrastructure is a crucial part in ramping up our hydrogen economy. We need to be able to provide the hydrogen, and this is also the case why we are transitioning from tube trailers to our own H2 generation on site.
Thank you. And since we're close to the hour, I'll ask this last question. What hydrogen slip range have you measured on your engine, and how low can you go?
Yeah, I'll be happy to answer that question. So we've done careful combustion development in order to take a look at not only emissions, and Klaus pointed out that as we apply our combustion concept, we're not only reducing CO2 because we're switching to H2, which is a carbon-free fuel, but also NOx emissions have gone down. And obviously, in order to maximize efficiency, we're very careful about making sure that our hydrogen slip is as low as possible. To give you a feeling for the range, we're talking significantly below 1,000 ppm of H2 slip. And I think this is really down to the last molecules of H2 that managed to get by the combustion process. But further optimization is underway, and it's a very, very small number already.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. We'll have to close our Q&A session, but don't worry if your questions haven't been answered, as the speakers will get back to you via email. And that just leaves me to thank Klaus, Matthias, and Wolfgang for what was a great presentation, and to INNIO Jenbacher for sponsoring this session. To the attendees, the recording of this webinar will be made available, and the presentation will be available via stream after the webinar. You will also receive a short email telling you how you can access the on-demand version of this webinar, or you can access this through our website, www.pmi-live.com. We look forward to sharing further webinars with you, so please do keep an eye on the website just mentioned, and follow us on Twitter at BRWebinars for daily updates, and join our LinkedIn group, Business Review Webinars. Thank you once again, and I hope you all have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.